did you do? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Because otherwise you wait for a wedding.
And then what
Exactly.
but whenever I was he was like, we should all like do that. And so what you have to
Right.
the fancy dinner. We could do that on a much smaller budget and
Right.
still be able to provide the same thing. He said that everybody was still talking about that work and stuff like that.
Wait, you can go with that. It's halftime. I've never attended.
Because I saw that and my cousin
Like DJ. Mr. Goldstein. On the father daughter dance for habitat. Is there a DJ? Is there a DJ music? How did
Really good friends. They used to change.
For the, I'm sorry.
There's a DJ.
Is there a DJ? Sorry. We hadn't been, I was just waiting for her.
How does that dance?
That's okay. It's rare that, sorry. I was trying to do a look quiet.
With
It's for a good cause.
talking to his wife and him, but they moved him to another floor. They call it overflow to try to figure out there's damage. He's going to physical therapy. He was in his police car. He had his canine with him. It was all he took him today. It's fine. So just let go. I'm just briefing them on that.
It was a miracle that she did it in the original nursing.
We're still working on that. So you were down there, I tell you,
Not yet.
Somebody did it?
Stan was going to walk. Kind of just watching over that.
Not me. It's not, but maybe one or two African Americans on the board. He's one of them. The other one's, I want to say it might be two.
You don't want to do a thing.
But I
Last
didn't.
name.
Look, we have standards around here. Let's try to make sure.
So you sound like me. You said that, and I sound like for some reason people aren't as comfortable with just making obvious.
All right, pass it down. It's just some notes I printed out. Everybody should have an agenda, right? So I will, another formality, I'll call this work session of the Enterprise City Council to order and let the record show that all council members are present. So as everybody knows, we're here for our annual quarterly, our annual, not our quarterly, our annual strategic planning session. So as you all know, I'm not a professional facilitator, but I'll do my best to facilitate us and keep us on track and make sure we walk out of here with our marching orders for the staff for the year, also 3-year, and we're going to add in a 10-year vision also. So the idea today is not to get down in the weeds. We do that on a regular basis at our bi-weekly council meetings. Today we're trying to rise up, get above the clouds, cast a vision for where we need to be heading, and communicate that clearly to staff and to the community and to each other about what our actual what's actually important. So just a little review of what I see this process has allowed us to do. So I think one thing we need to do is celebrate some of our wins from our last annual session. You can see I passed out. Y'all should be able to see the 2022 goals, but some high points. We're still in the middle of some road resurfacing. Obviously, well on our way to improving our PCI numbers, which is a long-term goal of ours. Well on our way to completing our comprehensive plan. The soccer and multi-use complex out at PB Park, phase 1 of that went to bid in the last few weeks. We're under construction on the Recreation and Aquatics Center. Our ADVA commitments are, the actual building is under construction and we're well on the way with our commitments. They appear to be on schedule, right, Jonathan?
Yes, sir.
So we've got some sidewalk repairs that we've been working on. Our workforce development, that's something that I feel strongly initiated in this meeting last year. That without us setting that as a strategy to have some real conversations with our local educators, and now we've got a workforce development center that is planned out at the junior college. We passed an STO, short-term rental ordinance. Our governmental relation plans at the state level has been solidified and underway, and we've already had some dividends paid for that, right, John?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
City Hall renovation is close to going out to bid. Staff has a training and development program. Our council packets have been posted online. When we get our packets, they're available for the public at the same time. So that's just some of the successes from the last year. There are obviously many, many more. But that's why these meetings are important, so we can talk about those big issues, develop a plan, some actual tactics to take them down one by one, and do that. We've shown an ability to do that. So our agenda for the day, as you see, if we stay on track, I think we can have us out of here probably before 3 o'clock. We did a lot of the heavy lifting on this last year and the prior year, so these meetings are going to get easier and easier as we get together. It's just going to be more of a revisit, refresh, talk about what went wrong, what went right, and kind of course correct, make sure that we're still, what we said was important last year is still important this year. So you may feel when you leave here today like we didn't get as much accomplished. I would say that's natural, but it's probably because we did so much in previous years. It just makes these easier. So I do think we can get out here before 3 o'clock if we stay on track, but definitely by 3:30. So part of what we're doing here, just a reminder, is getting on a quarterly rhythm. We're getting on that 90-day rhythm of gathering every 90 days, talking. Of course, this is the annual piece of that, but talking every 90 days about what's important, what's the next most important thing, so that we accomplish our 10-year, 3-year, and 1-year goals. And it's getting staff accustomed to to not being reactionary. So we're giving them their next 90 days, what's most important that the council wants to get accomplished. And that should communicate what's actually important, not, what we think of tomorrow afternoon or when some emergency comes up. I mean, obviously those things happen and we need to address them. But the most important things are what we're discussing in these meetings. So did everybody at least accomplish some of the homework that I sent out, the SWOT analysis, which is our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I hope y'all are ready with some notes on that. So obviously strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization. Those are things that obviously the strengths that we think we're good at. The weaknesses are things we need to work at. And then the opportunities and threats are things that are external to the organization that we do not have control over, but that we need to be aware of and we need to say out loud and talk about so that we have a plan so we're not surprised when things happen. So we're just going to dive right in here. Any questions on the agenda or what we're doing here? Everybody good? All right, so let's just dive right into our SWOT analysis. We'll start with strengths. Jonathan, you going to be our secretary?
I will.
Of course, I asked Jonathan and the mayor to get with staff and to perform the same exercise. Obviously, this is a council meeting, it's not a staff meeting, so, the focus will be on what, mayor and council think, but I wanted staff to have a voice in this meeting, so I asked Jonathan to kind of synthesize and make sure that we don't have any blind spots on all this. So Jonathan, make sure that you get that stuff on the board also. So if we could, let's start with strengths. What we're going to do here is, I think what we did last year too, is kind of a round robin. We'll let Scotty name one. Let's try to rack and stack these. Start with what you think are our strongest suits. It doesn't have to be in perfect order. But Scotty, you can say one, and then Mayor and Jonathan, are y'all unified on this, or do we want him to go and you to go, or how do y'all want to handle that?
However you want to, Mayor. Okay.
Okay. So Scotty, go ahead.
I'd say, safety-wise and stuff, our first responders, which includes, fire, police, enterprise rescue. Now we've gained by having the helicopter out there now, which I can see further growth in that. So that brings a lot to the city for safety and health for not only us, but for our surrounding cities. People see, when they see that fire, the helicopter go in, or like I said, enterprise rescue, even though we know they're not part of the city, but the name's out there.
Well, these are strengths of the community, not necessarily the city government, so that's perfectly fine. Mayor, Jonathan, what y'all got?
Are you doing one at a time?
Yeah, sure, or however y'all want to handle it.
Okay. Well, so something that amongst the staff we talked about was the diversity of the community being a strength. We have a lot of people from a lot of different areas, a lot of backgrounds that are here, and we think that's a community strength.
All right. Sonia?
I think a strength for our community is that we're doing some things that the community has specifically asked for, like our recreational facility. We're listening to what the citizens are wanting and trying to make that happen. So I think that's a strength that the citizens can see that they're being at least listened to.
Citizen engagement, maybe?
Or responsive council, is that what it's done?
Yeah, basically.
I think we're being proactive, not so much
Mhm.
reacting.
Sure, responsive city government.
So,
Greg, what you got?
Had a couple of things that they've already said, but to add to, I think Enterprise has a long-standing belief that we can overcome whatever obstacles face us, evidenced by the Boll Weevil Monument and the story behind all of that. But we've seen multiple times where, tornadoes come through, the fire downtown, where the community just gathered together and said, we can do this, we can make this happen. So I think the sense of community that responds and helps each other, I don't know exactly what word to put on the board, but
Resilience or?
and I guess that's, yeah, resilience is good.
Eugene, what you think are?
I think our educational system and school system here is one of our very strong strengths, and it's one of the things that draws people to our city.
Is that both K through 12 and community college system? Or?
Including all, yes.
All right. One thing I had was our relationship with Fort Rucker, and obviously just the presence of Fort Rucker is a huge economic strength. But it drives higher wages, drives stability, makes us a little more resilient to the ups and downs of the economy.
Have the right proximity to Fort Rucker?
Sure. All right, so I know that we're taking each other's now. So Scotty, why don't you throw a few more out there that didn't make the list yet?
Find one that wasn't up there. Well, we said diversity, but I put growth, and what entitled, I guess, the education piece too. That all draws, and our growth is steady and it keeps on going. But I think that's under probably diversity under there. I think our willingness to, well, it was said with the ESCC, with our mutual agreement, we're helping, and with that workforce development center coming in, I think that's a strength that'll help all our different jobs around town. Our, HVAC, construction, plumbing, whatever it might be, gives us another opportunity for folks to, they've got a program down there now that can be brought out of anything over there. Trying to put a title on it.
So you said the Workforce Development Center is a strength, or the becoming Workforce Development Center.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and cooperative relationship, like maybe the
I think that's the word I'm looking for, with them, because not only, soon this year, we're gonna have an RN program out there, that's gonna bring more folks in. And we know what the medical side is, we're hurting for folks, in the medical field.
So maybe you would like a responsiveness to business and industry and workforce
That's
needs?
it. Again, back to being proactive, not reactive, with not just our citizens, but business people out there, the other organizations.
All right,
I knew there was a word there.
Jonathan, Mayor, y'all got a few that haven't made the list yet?
Yes, sir. So one of them that we had talked about was the water system. We have a very good water system, not just within the city limits, but expands outside of it. And that's a strength when you look at, on a national stage, the problems that a lot of communities are facing, particularly out west right now. We've got a great system, capacity for growth, for both industry and for residential use. So.
Could we also add sewage that, as they're building houses, whatnot, having ample supply,
Yeah, I mean, y'all can add a few on this round, please. Let's start wheeling your list down.
One I forgot, I mentioned earlier first responders, but really the biggest strength, another strength we've got is our city workers. I think we won the lottery when we stole some folks from other places that's been around the city, but I think, not just say engineering, PIO, fire, police. The city workforce, yeah, that's a definite strength there.
And then I had one from talking to Chief Moore about our crime rate. I think most people view Enterprise as a very safe place to raise a family. So I would think that might be a strength.
Absolutely. Sonia, you got a few?
Yeah, I walked off with all my stuff I did my homework on, but one of the things, did we say growth? Just basic?
Scotty said that, but it didn't make the list.
But yeah, we're growing by leaps and bounds. We talked about the workforce development and trying to improve in those areas, but we do have some decent places for people to work, you know. So we're increasing with jobs with some of the new things that we have coming. So we got some increased opportunities for employment. There was something else I had on there. I think I had teamwork as a strength. When we kind of started this process that we're doing today, we've done some things that we had a lot of new staff. I know Leanne was on board, Barry, I think, when we kind of did the structure of the of our staff and kind of restructure. And I think we've seen some positives with that happening, you know. And the kind of this way we're doing this quarterly goals, the yearly goals, is really effective in seeing the big picture. So I guess teamwork would be my kind of all that falls underneath there.
Correct.
I think one of our strengths in Enterprise is our fiscal situation and the fact that we are trying to be fiscally responsible and not try to act like some other governments.
You got some more that aren't on there yet?
A lot of what I had down was has already been said.
I'll say one more.
Turner, I put it under what we do well is transparency. We're out there, people can see that. Our social media has just grown by leaps and bounds too, of getting the word out there. Nothing's hidden, even what we're doing today.
Beautiful days downtown.
And we've invited folks, and you see we've got some people in the back that are concerned citizens.
I would say we have a thriving downtown. It's become a fun downtown now since we implemented, not saying it wasn't, but even more fun, I'd say, downtown with some of the things that we've changed with the entertainment district. So we are modernizing areas of our city.
I think going along with our city workforce, that we need to think about the services that our public works department provides for us. You mean along with the garbage pickup, you know, we have trash pickup, and I think we do an excellent job with our city services.
And Parks and Rec, I have a lot of people that visit here and visit our parks and say, wow, it's some of the best parks that we've been to.
We don't have anything up there about Parks and Recs, and that's so important.
They hit on that about
The one thing I've got, you clear with that?
Yes, sir.
Is our housing industry is developed and capable of producing a mix of housing. I realize there's been periods the last few years we haven't had enough inventory, but at least we've got a responsive industry that's building. I know we have some neighboring communities that just can't get that going. You gotta have jobs, you gotta be able to school the people, you gotta be able to get the kids in Parks and Rec, but you also gotta be able to have roofs over their heads, and that is a strength of ours. Anybody else? Go ahead.
This
Greg.
might fall under responsive city government or teamwork, but I think the willingness of this current council, mayor, city employees all together to tackle hard issues and not avoid them, I think that has been something that's been a very, I think it's a strength of ours, because still kicking the can down the road on some issues that we could have been easy to do. We've just said, all right, how do we fix it? How do we make it work? And
yeah, I mean, I've heard that related to recently in another setting of facing the brutal facts. Like you say them out, which we're going to get to here in a minute. We're doing the fun stuff now, patting ourselves on the back. But at some point, you got to say the brutal facts, write them down, and address them instead of sticking your head in the sand. But that's excellent point. I've got the list from last year here. I meant to print it out, but I didn't. But so I think most of these are covered. We've got accountability of elected officials, which we've got responsiveness up there. We've got cooperative and deliberative governing body. I think we've covered that. Community development and communication. Military support, especially Fort Rucker, Enterprise City Schools, and Enterprise State Community College. Welcoming to business and new people, a diverse housing mix, transparency, strong civic organizations and churches. Should we add that? Strong civic organizations and churches, certainly a strength. Economic development, diversity of people and cultures. Downtown enterprise, we spoke about. Sonia, you said a vibrant downtown, right?
Mm-hmm.
The city financials are strong, we said that. Local economy is strong, we said that. Safety and security, parenthetically our first responders, Scotty said that. Our transportation infrastructure, so saying that our road networks are developed and strong, and then our city staff, which we spoke about. So any other strengths before we move on to weaknesses that y'all think need to be talked about? Obviously, this is why it's important to talk about is, you want to take advantage of these things. You want to accentuate these. You want to manage to them to make sure that we're using these. But, obviously, I think sometimes they get kind of lost and we focus on what we're about to talk about as our weaknesses. So any other strength? Go ahead.
Welcome, I know we mentioned hospitality and tourism. We welcome newcomers, people, that's a lot of things I hear, is that this is a friendly city. So I'm glad where that stands.
Yes, so that was certainly something we had on last year's list, because we were welcoming to business and new people and visitors. I'll make sure it stays on the list.
What was the term?
Welcoming to, I hate to put words in Billy's mouth, but welcoming to new people and new businesses. Is that?
Yeah.
Sense of hospitality.
Because we hear that from a lot of retirees, when they come back, especially in the military, they say, hey, part of the reason why I come back is because of the friendliness of the city, how
Because-
welcome we feel.
Yeah, and we had that tie-in with the newcomers brief out there. Any type of event like that, I know our tourism downtown Main Street are at those events. Ballpark, that just all ties in. Farmers
Well, it
market,
ties into
everything.
your community groups as well and
Yeah.
churches. It's the fact that you have a community that, is accepting of newcomers. And that is part of the spirit. I think that kind of goes back to a lot of things that we've tied in. Another thing, just to add in, that we do have the ability, I know we talked about triumph over adversity, but the way in which we reimagine, it's how we have gotten through some of the tough times, especially with COVID, how events were reimagined. We kept the concept of keeping you safe while open for business. And it was the ability of our certain events, especially with Parks and Rec and some of the signature events, to be reimagined instead of closing things out. So that ability to reimagine and repurpose things, I think is key and kept us more than surviving during those times. And it's also those signature events, I think, that open us up to the hospitality. Whether it be sports tourism or signature events that we're known for here, do attract people to get to explore our area. The exposure to our area allows people to get to know us a little bit better.
You got that?
That was a lot of words.
Jonathan?
Basically, signature events.
On the
Or
national
successful.
side, the Times Enterprise has made it on TV, on
Yes.
several of those national shows because of Our Lady in the Middle.
They do.
Famous.
Which then brings, I need to see the city more.
Absolutely. And I think we do have some fairly good marketing strategies. I think I'll mention that on strengths and weaknesses, but I think the communication is key. And again, several of these opportunities, whether it's sports tourism, signature events, some of our other programs that we have, keeping them in the forefront of local. We have a great relationship with local media. We're developing a better relationship with national media. Says a lot. And those are the opportunities for us to get to do that exposure.
All right, so that was the fun part. Now we get to talk about, we got to pat ourselves on the back for a few minutes there. Now we got, those are things that, like I said, we need to leverage, we need to do more of. We don't need to throw them in the drawer and say, well, we've got those things covered. No, we're good at these, we need to do more of them, so they don't become weaknesses one day. So now we're going to talk about weaknesses. So, the same one here, Scotty, you throw one out that you think is our biggest, most glaring weakness.
Well, I don't know if it's the biggest one, but it's the one that I've been on bandwagon for. And since someone told me the other day my middle name is Sidewalk, our sidewalks connectivity with our neighborhoods and with our parks. And I know we've got a big brief from our comprehensive plan or the other night showing those things, but that's something we've got to get a handle on.
So I heard you say, which, I would argue sidewalks is more of a solution to a problem, but you stated the problem was connectivity.
Connectivity, yeah, that's high
Connectivity from neighborhoods
Yep,
to parks
and downtown.
And the business
Exactly.
districts. Not just downtown,
It's the circle.
right. We had somebody struck and killed trying to get to Walmart.
Yeah, yeah.
Another one across on Rucker Boulevard.
Yeah. All right. Mayor Jonathan, weakness.
Well, we can mention that we're living in the area that we are trying to compete, like with our firemen, Fort Rucker, the pay, in Dothan, the pay for our police department and things and so, not being able, in a sense, to compete with the largest cities of the federal government and trying to retain our people in certain positions.
Pay, city pay, or how do you want to phrase that?
I think the way he said it was inability to compete with federal and larger cities for specific positions. Sonia?
Well, of course, I think one of our weaknesses is, I guess here comes the ugly, consistency. What I'm referring to in consistency is cleanliness in certain areas, like just being consistent. We have consistent trash pickup on certain days. We got consistent pickup limbs, but like just the consistency of keeping, areas tidy.
When you say consistency, you're referring specifically to beautification and cleanliness.
Mm-hmm.
You got that, Jonathan? Greg?
I know we're going to be taking some steps, I think, I saw maybe March to start dealing with this, but we still deal with some of our citizen-facing people not having good customer service skills. And no matter whether that's with city employees or water department employees, whichever one it happens to be, the citizens look at it as the city. And so the number one complaint that I get as a councilman is how they hate going to City Hall, and it almost always involves a couple of departments. And so I would just say that citizen-facing customer service is currently a weakness. Hopefully that training that is going to happen is going to start correcting that, but today it's a weakness.
Eugene?
Well, this kind of goes along with what Sonia said, but I think we have codes in place to enforce beautification. We always, I guess, going to have some slumlords, and it's hard to keep them in order as far as cleanliness and beautification goes. But I think we do a poor job of enforcing some of our codes when it comes to beautification.
To piggyback on that, I had no plan to manage blight. I think they're related, but so enforcement of the existing and then a plan to manage blight in the future. My top is my top, but one of my tops is our sewer system. Mayor's correct, we have a good sewer system that can be tapped into all around town, but our sewage wastewater treatment plants are definitely a weakness. The age of them.
So just, I guess, some feedback from our departments, and we can get into that. And under weaknesses, one was that we received was that we seem to consistently play catch up with employment, technology, and growth. And so we also don't complete projects before beginning another. And at times put too much on staff to the point they can't do their job to the best of their ability. So that's from a holistic management approach. And I will say that with that, a lot of these things are being addressed, but it's kind of building the airplane while we're flying it. And so I think that a lot of the staff are being tasked to do a lot of change in a short amount of time. And at times that can feel overwhelming in addition to their day-to-day tasks. So I don't know how to encompass those thoughts, but it seems like we're being very ambitious on a lot of things, and performance can either degrade. And I think probably one of the best ways that the mayor and I were talking about it yesterday that I realized over the last month or two as we were getting these projects to bid, when I talked to some of the staff members, it wasn't that they don't have the ability to perform what's being asked. So I wasn't asking, in some cases, the right question, which was not can you do this, but if you do this, at what cost? Like, in other words, if we do a parking lot downtown, what manpower does that take, and what projects get delayed to do that? And so I don't know how to really encompass that thought.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're talking about resource management. That resource being your staff bandwidth. Put something like that, and we'll wordsmith it. Scotty?
Our, I guess, transportation plan or local transportation I hear a lot from folks with, the service roads, and I keep telling them a lot of that is outdot. And so we've got to grease that wheel there, but, what's happening in the future with the business? We know everybody wants between 167 and 84. What are we going to do to kind of say, hey, got to push in the south side? I mean, we're running out of room. Chief could probably answer the questions on, especially across from McDonald's. It seems like there's an accident there every day when I see my 911 stuff here. It goes off continually, or somebody gets hit. So as we grow, we've got to look at what we're doing with our streets, and not only here, but also in our neighborhoods. Are those streets wide enough, for our first responders to get down? And I guess part of that, I put under transportation plan, was a lack of parking. I know we've done great things in parking, but we could still use more parking, especially downtown, because I hear that a lot from different folks.
So let's break those down into a few different.
Go ahead.
A few different bullet points. So
Lack of parking,
that's an easy one.
transportation plan?
You specifically parking downtown?
Yeah, I'll say that.
Okay. Then lack of a plan to relieve congestion.
Yes, around
on
the circle.
The busy parts of the circle.
And through the downtown too. And we know that Main Street belongs to Aldott. And
Do we call that an access management plan? What do we
that
call
might
that?
be a good word.
This access manual.
Yeah,
On the circle, it's access management, right? How to get
Yes.
cars safely onto the circle.
right.
Well, it's also downtown because there's Aldott roads.
I was calling Aldott corridors. I mean, that's what you're talking
And
about.
Rucker Boulevard, but all of that, they look at downtown as, it's just a roadway to get from point A to point B, so if that's closed, then they divert them around the circle.
Did that cover your,
Mhm.
you, Scotty? Anything else on your list?
Well, we've already talked about the inability to compete with our surrounding, because I had down here time again to talk about the tier thing and retirement and keeping our city workers, because we're losing too many of them. And there are other options that we can put in there that we can maybe offer folks to stay around a little bit more. That, I think, for further discussion to dive in, I've got some ideas. I've talked with Christina about some things. And some of the other folks too, but I think it's time we talk about that again.
So what do we need on the board here?
Well, was that go into that there?
Okay.
I think it
That's what
always ties in here.
when the mayor said that, I had that in a couple places. What is not likely to change, or what do we not do well? And in our neighboring communities could point out our flaws, what would be, and that would be one, try to stay competitive.
Okay.
Mayor.
I was gonna add to what, you were saying there about,
The resource management.
yes, I would suggest,
Make sure
our
you
weakness
put
is that we,
staff there.
that,
Staff capabilities or
They're still working on
in that.
that wording.
Sonia, what else you got?
Mayor was finishing his thought, I think. You were saying something there?
yeah. My suggestion would be to the council that we, in the weakness part, not taking on any more, big projects until we kind of complete what we have now because of the staff being stretched out, long hours and whatnot, and of course, a lot of them have children that's playing ball and this, that, and the other, so what happened is that it's taking a lot of time. They're doing good, but I would say that not having the manpower, and you have people that in certain spots that are down there at 7 to 8 o'clock at night, so I was just saying we should finish out what we have.
So that's a tactic to deal with a weakness. That's not necessarily, the weakness is up here.
Or it should be like a
The
man.
tactic to dealing with that would be to stop doing that. But yeah, I think we hear you.
Lack of manpower could still be, what he said, we could put lack of manpower as a weakness.
Yeah. Depth.
Sonia, what else you got?
Depth of manpower.
I have a weakness as a city. We don't have strong national retail in our city. I've just heard that as a, why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? Why can't we have this? Why, and I don't know why that's a weakness when we see other cities around us get certain things and we don't. Like you would think simple, I'll just use Chipotle.
But retail and
Yeah, retail.
Retail.
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of national, where we have as a strength some nice local business retail, but we just don't have strong national retail presence.
What else you got, Sonia?
This is a counter to a strength. We do have good communication, but sometimes we can have poor communication. It's easy to communicate with entities and other communities or other resources in the city that are nice to us. We can communicate really well. Sometimes when we don't get the communication or the response from others, that we kind of back off. And so to take on a more, well, why not us? Like be the bigger person. If we need to bridge a gap between us and somebody else to have stronger communication, I think we should do that.
You got anything else, Sonia?
Do we say trash? Do we have on there, see, we said walkability. I think I had on there a lack of public transportation.
The transit authorities.
Like some type of transit. I got one more, and then I think I'll be, our major way out the city, 167, is a weakness. I think it's a weakness.
So a 2-lane,
Yes.
167. Greg?
While our proximity to Fort Rucker is a major strength for us, I think it also, at times, our dependency on Fort Rucker can be a weakness. And by that I mean, if Fort Rucker were to go away, a lot of our jobs would go away. So, so dependency on Fort Rucker, and then I don't know if this would fall under that or a separate one, but, lack of industry. We have some.
So last year we had a weakness listed as lack of diversity in industry, too reliant on Fort Rucker. So
Same kind of concept. And I know we've had some new industry come into town since last year, but definitely
Sustainable industry.
would not be enough and not sustainable enough in industry to overcome if we were to lose Fort Rucker, which we hope would never happen, but it's something that I think we have to pay close attention to, is how dependent we are on Fort Rucker. It's a great strength and it's a great benefit to us, but we have to be careful with that. And then I know there's been some work that's been happening, but we still, a major weakness is our citizen-facing technology. I know there's work going on the website. I know there's work going on the, whatever that's called, the interface to where citizens are supposed to be able to go in and do certain things. But my experience at the moment is most of that is still not anywhere up to date.
Eugene?
Well, please don't think I'm knocking our police department in any way, but I get a lot of calls from our citizens in different neighborhoods complaining about speeders. Don't know what the answer to that is, but that is probably a weakness that most cities have, of problems similar to that.
So maybe a weakness is that we lack a plan to
Control
address,
speeding.
to control speed.
I think we have one. I just think it needs to put more money into some of the devices. We have a thing out there now that they're using that collects data
Yeah.
on time and day and the max speed and the fastest, and I'm sure the chief can, at one time, can expound on.
So right now, we're
It's one
talking
or two.
weaknesses, and that we identified as a weakness. We're not solving it right now, so.
Yeah.
What else you got, Eugene?
What about keeping a full staff? I know like in our public works department, we've got so many vacancies, and in other departments, but of course, that's a weakness other people are having the same problem with, but
Retention.
it's hard to provide your services when you don't have a full staff.
Inability to maintain a full staff in certain departments.
Would we extend that weakness to the community as a whole as well? Since that's happening in a lot of our, other
A lot of
industries.
municipalities.
Yeah, so not only, again, it's just
It's all
like
over.
retainability of workforce, keeping employment levels, fill the positions.
Yeah.
Because we see that a lot with small businesses.
Eugene, you got anything else?
Nothing else, no.
All right, some weaknesses I had were, it's related to the walkability connectivity, but our parks and trails, according to our comprehensive plan, we're coming up on maxing or, having too few parks for our population, and certainly the centralized nature of our parks are not, the distribution of the parks are not where they need to be. We do not have a cultural draw, specifically downtown, I would say. I think that's a missing piece to our puzzle. I know there's been talk about that. Struggle getting it off the ground, the private sector has at least. You ready, Jonathan? So I think we're on the right track here, and this is, certainly why Emily's in this room, why she was hired, but I still don't think we're reaching people. It's apparent we're gonna have to meet them where they're at. Obviously we meet twice a month. We're not gonna have those out in the community. We're gonna have them at City Hall. We're gonna have them in council chambers. We're gonna have our work sessions in city facilities. But, I think we're doing a much better job now. Case in point, this meeting is being documented. How do we get that information to them? I know, Emily, you're working on that, doing an excellent job with it, but I still think it's a weakness. I don't think we're there. Just because I've been eating lunch with somebody last week, and hire somebody that does what Emily does. I'm like, well, we hired somebody, her name's Emily, she does that. Y'all need to do this, and that. So I'm like, as a matter of fact, we're meeting next Tuesday to discuss all, we're just not, we're just not meeting them where they're at. Now, probably never been more challenging, obviously, because we lost our local newspaper, or one of our two local newspapers. Local media is dying in the vine. I don't think I'm going to offend anybody by saying that. How people consume information is so fragmented. We think it's Facebook and Instagram, but we're wrong. It's not. It's a major weakness. Our library is a weakness. The connectivity, we said connectivity over here, I assume that was in the context, or that was Scotty's context of walkability connectivity, which feeds into parks and all that, but the connectivity of our roads. We talked about congestion on the circle. If our roads had more connectivity, that would be one of the tactics that's mentioned in our comprehensive plan of relieving congestion on our primary roads, if you gave people more than one way to get there. The sustainability of our animal control and shelter situation, something I get a lot of calls about. Not something I'm particularly passionate or even aware of, but I constantly get feedback on that.
What is that again, Tony?
Yes,
There is
sir.
an animal control.
Animal control.
Animal control and our shelter
Shelter
situation.
situation.
Just the sustainability of what we've got in place for a myriad of reasons.
And there's a lot of passionate people in town about that. I get it a lot.
And then the lack of adequate special needs or accessible playground. Whether Billy thinks that's accurate or not, do you think that's a weakness of ours?
I would think so.
Attorney,
Even
you
though we
talk,
have some.
We have some,
John
but
Anderson Park.
is it where it needs to be? Is it distributed?
Distributed.
Attorney, we talked about that, remember the very first day, adaptability, remember I mentioned that on, not only for kids, but also senior adults, wheelchair folks.
Yeah. So just accessibility of our
Yeah.
parks and public spaces, I guess would be a more succinct way to put that. Jonathan, you got some more from staff that made the board yet?
Clear processes and procedure that are accessible to the public, so we still have a lot of work to do, I think, to get things on our website or in ways that people can find them and then navigate, what they need to get things done in the city, whether that's a business license or a permit. I think that's one thing that was pointed out. A lot of this was restaurants, indoor, outdoor activities for teens. Most of the only other one is accommodations that may fall under the retail and dining options. There's also, as we look at sports tourism and these new facilities that we're looking to bring in tournaments, when you look at really, how many hotel rooms do we have, and then how many good quality hotel rooms that you would recommend to a friend or a family member to stay in, those numbers are drastically different.
So we may have 600 rooms, but only 300 of them meet XYZ criteria.
That's right. So maybe I'll add lodging here.
Yeah, Jonathan, I had basically that what exists here is we have some upper mid-scale hotels. We have extended stay, but we still need an upper scale hotel, one that would have small conference room, restaurant in place. That's a great need, even though I know we have those, we've kind of fragmented that out. We can use the civic center, we can use these kind of things, but having something for these smaller groups that is all encompassing, the most we have here is what we consider upper mid-scale hotel.
Got everything?
I got one more. Oh, go ahead.
So I think it's important that we talk about continued education. So once we hire people, and I know I can only speak, pardon me, but I think everybody here, engineering, parks and recs, once we hire the person, what are we putting into them to continue their education, either outside college, extra courses, whatever?
So training and development is still a weakness.
That's correct. I'm not always trying, we've got to do 12 CEUs a year, and that's minimum. But we have a sergeant's test, and one of the officers took the sergeant's test and said, oh, that's what they mean by that. So did we fail for not preparing them for that?
I had one last one, if it's, so if you put it in here, is a lack of affordable housing for all income levels. I hear that all the time. And we got a lot of houses going out there, but not everybody can afford them at all income levels. And if we're going to be a diversified, welcome everybody, that's a big part, in my opinion.
Any other weaknesses that didn't make the list? All right, let's move on to opportunities and threats. So these are trends that are external to the organization or to the city that we typically would not have control over. But like I said earlier, we need to be aware of. We need to say them out loud, write them down, and make sure that we've got that we're planning accordingly. So there's things that we need to make sure are on our radar. Scotty, why don't you rattle off your let me back up. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Weaknesses. So I wanted to read our list of weaknesses from last year, and hopefully you hear in this a few things that we've addressed and are no longer weaknesses. If we're not at least addressing them, then we're getting this whole thing wrong. So weaknesses from last year were lack of diversity in industry, to rely on Fort Rucker, external communications and media, of course that's why Emily's in the room, maintaining infrastructure, as well as paving roads and putting in water pipe, relationship with intergovernmental agencies, not business friendly enough, city hall design and accessibility, especially for newcomers, and we're working on that, use of the business incubator, probably still a weakness, is it not? Workforce development, which we addressed last year, not that we solved it, but we certainly addressed it with the junior college program. Traffic management, which we repeated this year, traffic management, especially on the bypass in downtown, truck traffic and signalization. Lack of developable land for commercial growth, retail and dining. Lack of cultural events, engagement with the Hispanic community, code enforcement and blight regarding vacant buildings, planning and zoning. Ordinances need to be updated, how this impacts development and crime. Then homelessness, low rent, affordable housing, no current comprehensive plan, which we will soon be able to say that's not true. Our city website, which Greg repeated again. So moving on to threats and opportunities. Got it? As soon as we get through this, we'll take a brief break and everybody's squirming a little bit.
Well, I was looking at, what may impact our industries and organizations, and we have done something to start this, but really we don't have the building space available to draw in industries. That's a good thing. We don't have empty buildings, plants out there like some of the bigger cities.
The spec building availability?
Yeah, we need to further look into that, to draw those folks, and especially.
So I would say that's a weakness. That is not an opportunity or a threat. That is something that is internal to us. So if you'll just add that to the weakness list, that's something we can control. Follow me? And it's okay. We can go back and have these lists.
I was going to say, take the opportunity to do something like that, but okay.
So opportunities and threats are things that are outside our community. So, having said that, do you have any others that are weaknesses that we need to get on the?
No. Well, Greg mentioned it before, a threat, if we lose Fort Rucker.
Yeah.
Accessibility back. I've got it down here.
Maybe put that as like a rack type.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
even though I
certainly
really
what
don't think that.
I had Barack as one of mine.
That would probably be the top done.
Mayor or Jonathan and staff.
We had one that we talked about, it was technology. So we have a lot of advances in technology, in ranging from on our cars, so EVs that are coming in, so how that would look with our current transportation infrastructure and people buying them. We also have technology on our, social media, our website, city functions. There's a lot of things that maybe we still do in carbon copy triplicate down at City Hall, and we're widening that gap currently. Every year that we don't address it. So, and then we also have cyber security that came in with that.
So the ever-evolving technological landscape.
Yeah.
Last year we said cybersecurity, online retail. Sonia, got any opportunities and threats?
I had a couple of threats. We talk about things outside of our control. We don't like to see empty buildings. We want all our businesses thriving, but, the threat of losing business because people can't meet the demands or keep the staff. That affects our city, our community, and the obvious inflation. We don't have control of that, so it affects
inflation in the economy.
in the economy. We don't have control of that.
Correct.
Just piggyback on what Sonia was saying, that tremendous amount of concern and about everything that I read, that we may be headed quickly before the end of this year to a pretty deep economic situation, recession, whatever they want to call it. So that's definitely a huge threat that we have to deal with. I think going back to, we had talked about weaknesses earlier about not getting the word out to people. I think that this can be a threat and opportunity. I'm not sure which direction it is. The fact that people do have diversified how they consume media is a very difficult thing. I've been in a couple different conferences over the last few weeks and meetings, and this is a recurring theme that I'm hearing in business and everything, is that you can't just run a TV ad anymore. You can't just get on the local news anymore. You can't just put it in the newspaper anymore. You can't put it on the radio anymore. You've got to do things like show up in their YouTube video as an ad. You've got to show up in their Netflix video as an ad. I'm not sure how to put that into words, but it's a threat because it's so hard to get word out to people.
Fragmentation of media and how people consume the media.
And it, some of our social media has definitely greatly improved, but it amazes me how many people still don't have a clue. So that's, I think the BRAC, the technology, the inflation, and then that fragmentation media, those are the things I already had on my list, so it's been well covered here already by everybody else.
Eugene?
Well, BRAC, of course, was the number one thing I had on mind, Fort Rucker, and the way we depend on it. But as far as an opportunity goes, our downtown is really thriving right now, but we still have some empty buildings. And I know some of the other cities around us, Andalusia, for instance, have purchased some old properties, actually refurbished them and turned around and leases them out. So, something we could think about.
Well, so to piggyback on that threat, the big problem we have with most of the empty buildings is owners that don't want to sell or do anything with those buildings.
So maybe let's go back over to the weaknesses of something Eugene just added, was the inability to, we don't have a redevelopment authority. We don't have a land bank. We don't have those types of entities that can do what you're referring to. Anything else, Eugene?
Everything else I had is about already covered.
So I had a few trends that, so the migration south. I mean, obviously Texas, Florida, and Tennessee are the big winners, but I do think our area will benefit from the migration south. I think the work from home trend, which, you know, is sometimes the most popular thing going on, and now it seems like it's waning a little bit, but it's here to stay. Work from home. I do think that retail will continue to change. You know, brick and mortar, I think the death of brick and mortar was probably prematurely predicted, but it's something we need to keep an eye on as retail continues to evolve. And then the last thing I had was I think we've been fortunate so far, but we won't always be, to avoid this, the woke cancel culture of, that seems to be very popular nowadays, of whether it's marching on our council meetings or, some activists, encroaching upon our Parks and Recreation Department or our school system, just that whether you like it or not, it's inconsistent with our local culture. And that is an outside threat to our peace and quiet. You might have anything else on the, go ahead.
I'm not sure which category we've talked about today this could fall under, but one thing that it can be a threat to our workforce is the gig economy, but it can also be an opportunity if we focus on that and make the city friendly to that.
Yeah, so the gig economy. Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity and a threat.
A lot of people are starting their own businesses. They're basically creating their own job. They're not really creating so much as of a business in the sense of where they're employing other people, but they're removing themselves from the workforce and providing a service on their own time and on their own way and in their own space. And we've got to become friendly to that because it's here to stay for sure.
Mm-hmm. Any other external threats and opportunities we need on the board that'll help frame our goal setting?
Just a couple of opportunities that may fall under other categories that we mentioned, but again, our water system is an opportunity because we do have abundant water supply in the area. So how we do that and look at that to attract, potential residents, potential jobs that could be here because of that is a huge opportunity. And we also have, for being in a rural part of the state or the nation, we have a lot of infrastructure pertaining to broadband, fiber, maybe not as much as some areas, but there's certainly an opportunity to capitalize on that because we have more than a lot of places our size. So I don't know if you think any of those warrant, either of those warrant.
Yeah, I think, you're speaking more to strengths, I would think, but yeah, absolutely. You think that we have a strong fiber infrastructure and water infrastructure. Of course, we've got water on the strength.
So I guess what I would say is, succinctly, there's a national issue with a drought to the west.
Well then, I think that's how you should state it, the lack of water resources in other regions. And then the lack of information, data infrastructure, Greg, how would you say that? lack of internet capabilities or in other regions?
Yeah, I think so.
Lack of fiber broadband.
Yeah, there you go. All right, what else from the staff? All right, well, hearing none, what we'll do is we'll take about a 15-minute break. Everybody stretch your legs, go to the restroom. So when we come back, we're going to be setting goals, which is really what we came here to do today. These were to kind of get all of our thoughts out on the table of what we're good at, what we're bad at, what we need to be aware of. So please study our list here, and we'll get back to work. back north.
It'd be nice if Davis would come back.
Yeah, we work, but they come over to Crestview. Down there, yeah, so we trying to get that guy to come this way. I had a thing trying to show what all Alabama salaries of the superintendents of Alabama. I had I lost.
Is ours up there in the ranking?
I'm trying to find it. I was looking at it, there was one way.
Got the snacky. Got a little,
All right, is everybody ready to get going? We're
that cookie.
tracking about 7 or 8 minutes ahead of schedule, so hopefully we can continue to work ahead of schedule. So, we had it, last year, if you'll remember, we set a 3-year plan, a 3-year vision, kind of at the end of this administration's term, which is towards the end of 2025, what do we want the city to look like? And then we worked backwards from there and said, okay, if we want the city to look like that at the end of 2025, then what do we need to be doing this year to be on track to meet those goals? And then we said, okay, what do we need to be doing this quarter to meet those goals? So, we're going to follow that same tack, except we're going to add a 10-year. So this is, we didn't do this last year because we really needed to do the hard work of figuring out what we really needed to be focused on so that we had a successful administration. So, but now we really need to be thinking about the fact that, boy, wouldn't it have been nice if somebody had done this for us, and if we didn't have to go, do all the hard work on the rec center and on the road paving plan and on the, whether it's PD Park or City Hall, all those things that we're talking about now. So what do we need to be doing today in order to set up future councils for success? So in order to do that, we need to think about, okay, what's the city need to look like in 10 years? That's kind of an arbitrary number, but in 2033. So before we dive into that, I do want to review our 3-year first, just so we kind of know where we want to be, where we decided already we want to be, and then we're going to fall back to this 10 years. So I passed out. You should have it's labeled Vision 2025. Some of these we can probably almost check off. So the first item, repave city streets so that the average PCI rating is greater than or equal to 60. So in order for that to be a true statement in 2025, what needs to happen, Perry, Glenn, Jonathan, we just need to stay the course, right?
Technically, that statement is true today.
Yeah, but if we do nothing, it won't be true in 3 years, right, or in 2 years.
If you stay the course and finish up the 3B, it'll get even higher, and then we divert from that point in future years to an annual maintenance budget of some amount.
So specifically, we're going to say in 23B, is that
correct?
So 3B. So we're going to complete phase 3, and then in 2024, we're going to fall back to a maintenance plan.
Correct.
Okay. And then that will make that a true statement when we get to the end of 2025. All right. Complete city projects, recreation center and outdoor pool, soccer complex, sidewalks, city hall, other facilities. We'll start with the rec center and outdoor pool. I mean, we've contracted that. That's effective. From a council's point of view, we need to do nothing other than to continue to fund the project. Right? So we mark that off. Soccer complex, same.
Correct.
Right? Although we do have phase 2.
To bid, right? That's got to go to bid.
On the back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's on the back of, that's a 2-sided. Sidewalks. So who wants to take where we're at on sidewalks?
We're in a, right now, as long as the council continues to fund, we're putting money into sidewalks every year as a kind of a line item. So we budgeted for sidewalks again this year. I think it was $325,000. We'll continue to do that in future years, just like the roads. And in some years it may be more, some years it may be less. We are continuing to catch up from a lot of years of poor maintenance. Additionally, if there's an appetite, so we're going to start the TAP grant this year for new sidewalk. In future years, if council wants to continue with that program or other grants pertaining to sidewalks or whatever, that would be something that.
So I've got a question on sidewalks. These TAP projects, I think we've done 2 or maybe even 3 since Eugene, Sonia, and myself have been on the council. Maybe that's just the cynic in me, but it sure does seem like we could get it done a lot quicker and cheaper if we just went out and paid sidewalks ourselves. I mean, what say the engineers in the room?
Quicker, definitely.
I mean, a sidewalk we're not building the Hoover Dam here. I mean, what?
But you are getting a good bit of grant money, and a lot of that's going towards construction dollars. My gut feel tells me that it's a benefit financially to do a TAP grant, but if you're only depending on the TAP grant to get things done, it's going to take you a long time.
We'll never accomplish any
I don't think
goals
so.
with it.
Not for the goals on here you state. I think so what we've done this year is a kind of a combination. We have the TAP grant, which is doing the new sidewalks, and we put money into a budget line item to replace existing sidewalks that are in poor condition.
But the TAP grants are never going to make the splash. They're never going to really fundamentally change our pedestrian infrastructure.
But they could make an impact.
They can make an impact, but not alone. I mean, I think you would, if anytime we apply for any grant, if it's gonna get one piece of something done that we need, that's money that we don't have to worry about.
Well, I'm not saying we abandon the TAP.
Right.
But, I think we're kidding ourselves if we think TAP grants are going to get us to
it
where we
won't.
want to get with sidewalks.
It won't, because it takes 2 years for them to do.
2 years to get that one from Main Street out to the connection to the circle. Now, it does help because we have focus on getting through people's property. They have to give us, we're either going to do it on right of way, we have to handle drainage, we have to handle grading. There's a lot to go on putting new sidewalks. It's not just as simple as.
Yeah, I know I'm oversimplifying it.
But like that was one section that we probably would have picked on our own to do. But if we could have used that for a TAP grant, but maybe there's other areas you want to focus on that we can do that ourselves.
There's also, I think I've heard you and maybe Councilman Johnson talk about, our sidewalk's always the answer.
Right.
And so, from a maintenance standpoint, I'm looking at what we're having to fix right now from years of not maintaining the sidewalks, and then to add more scares me as a city administrator. Because, you think $325,000 is a big number, but it's not. It does not take care of, not even half a mile of sidewalks maybe. In some cases, depending on how severe it is. How much was that TAP grant for? It's like close to $900,000.
Yeah, that's close, $8.
Okay, $800,000 to $900,000, and that gets us from the end of Daleville Avenue at the bypass down to what we call, what is it, Silk Stocking or somewhere in there. I don't know what the name is.
Just short of that shopping center.
So it's not a long run for $800,000, and we're talking about trying to connect. So some of this becomes policy and what we set in our transportation infrastructure, our planning, our zoning requirements, and then, like if we adopt a subdivision, does that subdivision sidewalks, they put it in, does that become the city's responsibility? Or do we put that on the developer or the homeowners association within the subdivision? Do we even need sidewalks, or do we make a pathway in the road? In other words, widen the width of the road to be able to take, foot traffic. So it's a paved area instead of a raised, what we call a sidewalk. But it accomplishes the same thing.
Right. Okay. So complete projects, City Hall and other facilities. So City Hall goes to bid
Next month.
next month. What other facilities were we referring to? That's the last one on the list, really, wasn't it? City Hall?
Yeah, so we've got, so we're doing a maintenance building at Parks and Rec.
Right.
We've got the wastewater treatment plant upgrades that'll be coming on. We've got
pickleball.
pickleball courts. Yes, sir.
All right. Pickleball. Anything else need to be on the list? So we've got City Hall, the maintenance facility for Parks and Recs, which really, I realize it's two different contracts, but that'll be complete alongside the aquatics and gymnasium center, right? Then the wastewater treatment plant upgrades and the pickleball complex, anything?
Yeah, we've got the spec building at the airport, potential spec building at the industrial park.
Spec buildings.
We're obviously not to that point yet, but the hangar at the airport is, as of the last council meeting, we have authorization to proceed.
Right. All right, so completion and implementation of the comprehensive plan. So planning and zoning, planning commission is approving that tonight, correct?
Yes.
Of course, we'll need to approve that, right? Or
Not
that-
necessarily, right. They can vote a resolution to support it. Right.
They can, the council can vote to endorse the comprehensive plan, but they do not have to vote to accept it. The planning commission has that authority.
All right, the code updated was a goal, a 2025 goal. What needs to happen for that to become reality?
I think this week, some of our staff are holding some sessions, Thursday morning, 8:30. Is that right?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. With, homeowners, developers, engineers, people that use our engineering services for permit design, et cetera, and to propose what we're going to submit ultimately to the council and get feedback from them. I think at the end state, it'll be somewhere around June or July. Is that approximate when we've got a plan ready to adopt?
That would be for the zoning and subdivision regulations, but if we get good feedback on the code update, it can be as soon as we get a resolution to the council about that.
Okay. And a transportation plan as part of our comprehensive plan. What's the status of that? What needs to happen?
They've engaged SANE.
They've engaged SANE Associates, and Paul's worked with them too as part of that team to develop a transportation plan. But one of the outcomes of that can be to do a deeper dive into a couple portions of that transportation plan and have a more comprehensive look into certain areas.
So to address a lot of our weaknesses up here as far as accessibility on the circle, downtown, those types of connectivity, those would be deeper dives that branch off from our transportation plan.
Cost more money. There may be an increase in funding in that if we go down that route.
Yeah. So fully staffed police department, or police force, it's obviously a lofty goal, probably deserves a plan in and of itself, right? Is Chief still here?
May have stepped down.
But, I'll make a recommendation on that is, we probably just need to solicit a plan from, updated plan from Chief on what we need to be doing to be fully staffed. Completion of city obligations to ADDA pertaining veterans only, we just need to stay the course right there, right? No council action needed.
No council action.
Built and thriving retail development from the southern bypass.
So recently, the council, I think mid-June 22nd of last year, authorized us to move forward with lighting the southern bypass. So we just made a payment for the second check to Alabama Power for that investment, and that's on track to continue forward. On your next council meeting, you'll have authorization for the mayor to enter into an agreement with AlDOT for the maintenance of those lights, which we will have Alabama Power maintain the lights, but ultimately AlDOT wants us to be responsible for them. Who we get to manage it and maintain it is up to us. So that proposal or agreement will be in your council packets at the next meeting. But that's the next kind of step that I see in that plan.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't make somebody go build a development around there, but we can control certain things such as lighting, the bypass, and being receptive to developers that are trying to build around there. And you feel like we've got our foot on that gas, right?
I think we do. We've seen some trends in growth going that way. Community College and Mitchell Automotive being two that I can think of right now.
Soccer complex.
City's making their investment in the soccer complex there at PV Park and pickleball, so that will continue to drive traffic. So rooftops and traffic are the two things that will entice retail to follow. So I think the city's doing what they can to make sure that that's an inviting area to invest.
All right. All high-density and/or multifamily developments up to code, safe and affordable housing in these high-density areas. Obviously, something that we hear about a lot in our council meetings. It's probably the number one issue we hear about in our council meetings.
Yeah, Thomas, can you give a quick update on where we're at? So I know a big priority for this council, this administration, has been nuisance properties, and I think that kind of ties into this. So we're really close to that. I know it's been kind of silent a little bit, but Thomas, give a quick update on that.
So council, so we've put together, you'll see it through the presentation on Thursday, a presentation for a property maintenance code. This is a code given us through ICC. It gives property standards for the exterior and interior of the building. This would basically give us the tools that we need to be able to enforce a standard around the city for all of our dwelling units. It would also give us some tools to use on cleaning up our commercial developments as well.
All right. Clear and defined process for externally interfacing entities doing business with the city. So, obviously that's saying a lot. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I know one thing y'all did last year to try to accomplish this was just identify what those interactions were.
So I will say that we've gotten better. We've put some things online, including like how-tos and facts on how to get business license permits. We've automated some of our water billing process, and it's not perfect. Our next steps will be to automate, along with our new website, the city app, automate the engineering department for permits and interactions there, as well as our business license and revenue departments to go online. We're taking them down one by one because we have choke points within the finance and IT points. I mean, they're pressure points. If we tried to do it all at once, we would almost certainly fail because we have to work out the kinks in it. We have to adapt, and we're also updating our Munis system in June, which is going to delay that. If we went online today, we're going to have to redo the back end of it come June anyway. So we're looking towards the end of 23 to really start rolling out some of those processes and in some cases, probably for all the staff here, it's been a lot slower than we anticipated or would like it to, but it is happening.
All right, clear and defined process for all citizens doing business with the city, that customer experience. I know those are some things y'all are working on. From a customer service standpoint, obviously that's a little more on the softer side from clear and defined processes, but it's related.
We are, so over the next 60 days, we'll be enrolling all of our external interfacing personnel in all city departments to begin training with a design course at Enterprise State Community College for customer service specifically. From that, the department heads are going to be engaged to actively manage that training such that once we receive the training, we hold our people accountable for what they've learned or should have learned in the training. So, in a lot of instances, what we've done is, we've told people, oh, well, act better, do better next time. But we don't document that. And then we have no training that we've done with them to see what the standard is. So it's really hard to hold people accountable when they don't know what the standard is and we're not documenting the failures to achieve the standard that is just, kind of a made-up standard right now. So we're going to have a standard, and then we're going to hold people accountable for the standard. So that's the process for customer service right now.
All right, so what's that we're moving forward with that? Public transportation of some kind, so that's a kind of a nebulous standard we put, but of some kind. I don't think we've done any work on this so far. I mean, what are your...
We've done some work. The mayor and I met on a couple of occasions with ALDOT. And we've also engaged in some Wiregrass Transit with the Southeast Regional Planning Commission on that. Part of the issue is the cost, just sheer cost. I mean, if we were to buy a city bus or multiple city buses, then and there are grant funds available. What seems to be a more clear solution that we could take advantage of if we had a willing partner like Wiregrass Transit would be to partner with an existing transit authority and be able to tag on a bus route or two and then grow that over time. So that's what we're trying to pursue right now, but we have not had good luck for whatever reason with the Regional Planning Commission and their ability to expand that. And I think some of that is their own ability to get outside. I think they expanded it to Ozark recently in Dale County. And so we would be kind of the next step in that. So in other words, they wouldn't serve Coffee County and then leave a gap in coverage. So they're working this way, and that's kind of the next logical step we can work out an agreement.
Now on that front, Enterprise Rescue is providing some transit to doctor's offices and things like that, right?
And Billy, you're on a senior center van, right, to do some things, but it's public transportation, but it's not for, it's for a specific purpose.
Right. And that's what Rescue Squad does too, right?
Yeah, and the DAB.
DAB.
But not only for all the general
But
public.
see, we could get that.
So this next item, I think we've all agreed to strike this, but it was central location of city services for military personnel at Soldier Service Center, Bill 5700. We determined that's not feasible, right?
It's not.
Scotty, you okay striking that?
Yes, sir.
Permanently?
Uh-huh.
All right.
My conversation out there.
All right, so next item, council and city board packets, agendas, and minutes on city website and meetings broadcast. That's a true statement, right?
Yes, sir.
Clear and defined state governmental relations strategy. That is a true statement.
Yes, sir.
City to develop and implement training, performance evaluation, and onboarding programs. I know we've done some. Is that fully true, or?
It's partially true. We haven't done the onboarding programs piece of that.
Okay. All right. But the training and performance evaluations are in place?
Yeah, we have current performance evaluations that are in place, and our training portal, VOGov, started in the last quarter of 22.
Robust partnership with the SCC, ECS, and Fort Rucker for workforce development solutions. I feel like this is something we identified. We went out and found a partner. We've got a solution in place. Is something we need to continue to work towards, or are we?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we just, we wrote our first check, right, or thereabouts. We've got an invoice anyway, that we haven't written a check for yet, but we got our first invoice from Enterprise State Community College for that funding agreement. If you remember, that's 20 years, $500,000 a year. They have a certain performance period over the next 18 months to break ground on their solution. I think that will be in 2023, but that's part of our agreement.
All right, then the city will develop and implement a financial plan to accomplish a capital plan for infrastructure, road, sewers, and roads, appropriations, city operations, debt, and user fees regarding sewer, sanitation, permanent physical facility. So basically, we're saying by the time the end of 2025 comes along, we'll have an intentional financial plan dealing with all these categories. So we've still got some work to do on some of those, right?
Yes, sir. We have. I would say we need to come up with a 5-year capital plan for the city. It's probably the biggest thing that we're failing on that.
All right. Then appropriations, we tackled some of that this past year. I think we've gotten better at that process. City operations, debt, user fees. I know we've addressed some of that. I think we've moved to a more sustainable.
And real quickly on the debt piece, I wanted to just highlight, just to make the council aware as you go forward and look at these projects. City currently has about $169,998,000 in debt. Of that debt, we will have capacity in various blocks of time where we could look to borrow more money.
And backing up just a little bit, so that 169 million, our annual debt service is around 8 million, 9.5, and then that goes through 2041.
It's about 17 and a half years from here.
To 2040.
2040, yeah, it's 2041.
Okay. So, all right, continue.
Well, 2040, it's at 9.5, and then the next year we'll
Go to 5.
go to 5.
All right. So what else were you saying that we got blocks?
Yeah, so somewhere in the next 2 years, starting now, we would have capacity to comfortably keep that debt level around 9.5 million and just wrap it around on the back end of our capital debt or our debt structure to borrow somewhere upwards of $25 million. So if we wanted to. In 27 to 28, that would add another bit of callable debt that would be around the $10 million range. And then in 2030 and 2031, that would be about $96 million worth of debt that would be callable. So those would be our windows that we would be able to, take on, whatever, you come up with, that our future councils would have the opportunity to build a library or whatever that is, if it fit within those windows. And you wanted to keep the debt payments at $9.5 million and your terms at 20 years.
So that keeps the term reasonable of keeping it under 20 years of total debt, keeps the debt service a static amount in a hopefully growing revenue stream, freeing up more free cash flow to pay as we go.
That's right. Now, you know, staff may have other recommendations about that
Yeah.
to look at when that time comes. But I wanted you to have kind of a realistic picture of, you know, if you wanted to do something in the next 2 years or next year, you know, what you'd be able to reasonably afford.
All right, so with all that said, we'll get back to the 2025 plan here in a minute. Let's go to a 10-year outlook now. So, you know, a lot of our weaknesses, as we know, were not addressed in this 2025 plan. I think, you know, obviously we have some realities of what we can actually accomplish, and we've heard a lot from staff today already of, you know, we're running on fumes, we're doing as much as we possibly can do, and then we've got the constraint of finances. Obviously, we only have X amount of money, we only have X amount of borrowing capacity to accomplish these. Now, all the plans that are currently on our 2025 are funded, provided there aren't any huge surprises, right?
So currently, as it sits, if the Rex or the City Hall renovations is in our budget, and the phase 2 of the PV Park project bids within budget, all total, we would be about $4 million over budget.
Over budget.
From our capital budget on what we designed for the, you know, the rec center, the pool, all those road resurfacing, sewer upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. We're looking at about $4 million right now, if those things bid within the budgeted amounts. So we would have options. We certainly have capital reserves that would be able to be looked at. We could go through traditional lending. We could do another bond issuance. Although I told Leanne that would be our last option. But we do have options, and I don't think that's any reason to take the foot off the gas on the current slate of projects. But it does make me a little cautious about what we decide we want to commit to from a financial standpoint, and still be able to absorb and have room left over if there is a catastrophic event that we would need to dip into. We do need to have some savings or capacity. You know, if we do have an incident at the wastewater treatment plant, or road or bridge failure or something like that, that we would need to react to.
So, you know, with that in mind, you know, this 10-year plan, you know, obviously is much less concrete. It's not like we're going to sit here tonight and determine, you know, let's just say we want to build we need a new library in the next 10 years. We're not going to determine that we need to build it in 2027 or 2029. This is how we're going to pay for it, and this is how many floors it's going to have and what color the drapes are going to be. We're not doing any of that tonight. We're simply stating, you know, that in 2033, in 10 years, these are the things that if the city's going to continue to grow, thrive, prosper, and be somewhere that people want to live, raise a family, or move to, then these are the things we need to be working on. And that would arm the council and the staff in future iterations of this meeting with the information they need to know what they're working on. So use the term deeper dive earlier. Maybe we, maybe in 2 years, maybe we do a deeper dive on a library or on a connectivity plan for pedestrian paths and bikeways and those types of things. So that's what we're thinking of when we're 10 years. So if everybody will, let's just take a few minutes to ourselves, study our strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and start to try to develop some goals on your own. Just write them down, and then we'll go around of what you think Enterprise will need by 2033 that we didn't just talk about, that we've already committed to to taking down in the next 3 years. So just take a few minutes and do that for me. Everybody needs some more time. Everybody good? All right. Jonathan, you go. All right. Scotty, we'll start with you again.
Well, I like to yield my time that table down there. You guys want now?
Eugene,
Because
go ahead.
I was told I was stealing some thunder.
No, Eugene, you go ahead.
Something that we would like to see in our 10-year plan to happen.
Yep.
I think public transportation is certainly one of them. Also, I think that affordable housing for people who is important. So that's two things that I would like to see come to happen within the 10-year plan.
All right, Greg?
I had public transportation and promote low-income housing developments as well. In addition, I'd like to see us set up some sort of a, I don't know, lobby group, whatever it would take to petition the governor until she gets sick of us, or the next governor until they're sick of us about 167 being 4-lane. We had talked about downtown. I'd love to see some sort of an amphitheater built downtown. A downtown redevelopment fund. Don't know how that would be financed, but
That's not what we're talking about today, so we're just throwing it out there.
What's your last one, Chris?
it's free money, so we'll do that.
What was the last one you said?
Downtown redevelopment fund. A land bank, we've discussed a few times. And spec buildings for industrial parks.
All right, Sonia?
I had a couple of those already, but one thing I would like to see in 2033, a thriving retail development, new shopping center somewhere over on that, the areas we discussed. Operation Clean Sweep, something that could be ongoing, that we have something in place to be able to make sure that that's something in place that we can just tap into when we need to for areas of blight, or when we have those situations come up, to not get to the point that we are now. Of course, adequate staffing for our first responders. And I put community resource center or additions, improvements to our library, even if it's not a brand new structure, making that a focus in 2023 to see what we can do to make that facility and that resource better for our citizens. And I had public transportation, and I had on there additions to the rec center. What I mean by let me see how can I say this. Well, by 2023, we'll have a new structure, a new facility. But just if it's, staying on top of the trends as far as parks and recs goes, a lot of cities just don't have one area. They have little small parks and recs that do various things. Maybe we can branch out a little bit, in different parts of the city to have small units of parks and recs facilities. Like what?
Satellite.
Yeah, that's right, satellites. And our sewer and wastewater issues would be solved and functioning, and that's all I had on my list.
All right. Mayor, you, Jonathan, staff have anything y'all want to add?
Yes, sir. The number one thing that we had talked about was, kind of goes along with what Councilwoman Rich just said, but mapping of the city infrastructure in GIS or asset management software. So a lot of the issues that we have, whether it's stormwater, sewer, water lines, I think Alan, you're dealing with a similar thing on the water side, is it takes a lot of time to go out and find these lines, inspect them, figure out what's wrong with them, replace them, and you're having to dig to find them and locate them. So that's something that I think would tie into, with what you just said, and something that is sorely needed. I also had a few facilities that maybe not mentioned earlier, but that I was tracking aside from the library, there could be a police, city hall decision point. If the city continues to grow over the next 10 years on this trend, there could be a time when we're fully staffed with police that the police department needs more space, or that City Hall needs more space, or both. And then at that point, we would be looking at building a new City Hall or a new police station. You know, one would stay, one would go, kind of situation. And then the other one that I've heard from Chief Davis is planning for a new fire station at some point in the future. And I think 10 years would certainly be.
10 years, I certainly believe that will be the case. And my biggest concern there, I'll be quick, is that we can't get a fire station and utilize a reserve engine that's 30 years old at that point. So unfortunately, the problem of needing a station is you also have to staff it with the personnel, obviously long-term expense, but a new engine as well on top of a replacement of our already existing engines, which is why I definitely like to see us at least preparing for that, so we're not caught off guard. I don't want Leanne coming after me.
And then
You got everything you said and what he said?
I had on there the parks and trails, road connectivity, access management plan, and then something I just briefly mentioned, I saw Bill Brooks walk in, but that he had sent me prior to this meeting, and was on our weaknesses about what the future of animal control or shelters look like for the city.
All right, let's make sure we get all that documented.
It's a new station. That, because he talked about it, like if the area, depending on if we grow, you might go to the station, okay? That he said that.
I heard something from Chief Davis about the fire trucks that I think deserves its own, because those are so expensive, obviously. It's not like buying a police crew.
Unfortunately, the earlier plan that we had done, their prices have skyrocketed.
Yeah, and that's also something in our planning. You know, right now we're using the fire fund. The fire fund is fixed, and that's by the legislature. So we can't, in future years, it would be unwise to continue to think that we'll be able to just fund new fire trucks out of that pot of money. With inflation and other, things like city growth and potentially adding additional fire trucks to the fleet, I don't think that it's possible that $30 per structure will continue to fund the fire department for new purchases in the future. So.
All right, Scotty?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the second one we have on the weakness, inability to compete. You know, we need to continue to strive for pay increases, incentives, whatever, for our city workers, first responders, so that we are either at par or above the surrounding community. You know, whatever we can do for recruiting, hiring, how would we
Competitive compensation plan
Yeah.
for city employees.
And, you know, that include incentives and all sorts of little things that, you know, may not seem like a lot to some folks, but, you know, childcare, whatever it might be, could be something good. We talked earlier about it, but continue looking at therapeutic programs, special needs, something like a miracle field, ahead of Dothan, you know, something, not only for the kids, but also for our senior adults. We do have a large community here, the Special Olympics, and they hold different events at bowling alleys and other places, and out the track and field, and this, again, can bring a lot of resources to our towns. A lot of families coming in, if we continue that, show that we're up to speed on that. You got that? Continue protecting our airport development. And we're going to maintain and stay up with some of the other cities around, and I still have a strong feeling that Benny Keith went where they did, I know for the land, but because they've got access to our airport, why go to Dothan and then drive all the way up when they go right here, and their jet flies in all the time. But, you know, we need to continue looking at things like crosswind runway hangars, you know, continue out there protecting that land around there for future developments. And we've got the spec building going in out there. I'll tell you, that's going to go quickly. More folks out there, once they see that, can say, hey, I'd like to move down there. And with Fort Rucker being right here as an asset, we may get some of that stuff out of Huntsville, from what I've been hearing. Connectivity, I think you said that, but continue with, you know, I think you might have said that 167, 4-lane, somebody said keep with the governor on that, all the way to Florida. Our infrastructure, we need to make sure that we are doing what we can so that we can handle all the continued progress, growth, which also includes our parks and recs, the things that drive folks into the town. Continue our South Side development through the Economic Development Group out of Wiregrass here. Continue pushing that, getting folks here. And we work on that transportation plan to get around the town. It'll be a whole lot easier for businesses to come in and say, oh, yeah, look, they got lights out there now, it's 4-lane now. And it'll be more appealing to folks coming into town. Transportation plan, I said that.
Yeah, we got that.
Circle. Something I'd like to see if we could do is do something with our the Civic Center out there to draw more larger trade shows, fairs, whatever. I mean, we got a facility out there that could do great things for the city, bringing a lot of folks out there. Further develop that. Well, we have the car thing out there all the time, but I think we could get better use out of that for the money that was put into that place. And then the other thing is, well, I'll talk about that later. SOS, we talked about animals. I'm not sure how many of the business, Greg, you may be able to help, that downtown older businesses understand the 772 amendment. How we can help those folks, our older businesses been around town. That still applies to them, right?
It can. So
It can.
Whatever you guys authorize.
Right, okay. Maybe something like that to help those folks downtown so we don't lose businesses. Say, hey, you know, here's something maybe able to help you develop your business or the building or help them out, because I hate to see somebody come in and, you know, a year or two later and they're gone.
So that could be part of the downtown redevelopment.
Right.
Or to just put an extra bullet on there, utilize,
Something to keep them in
772,
business. I mean, they've been here for a while. Let's help them out. I mean, we got new business coming too, but we need to help our older folks.
Yes, sir.
All right, some things that I've got, which most of mine were covered. Some of mine are a little more abstract. I said that, Enterprise would be a walkable and bikeable city with connected parks, schools, and business districts. I know that's kind of been covered. I don't know if and Greg touched on this a little bit with the amphitheater. I said that downtown is a cultural draw regionally, a regional cultural draw with a growing and vibrant mixed housing and walkable, say cartable, like golf cartable or neighborhood electric vehicles, whatever you want to call them, to downtown. So,
What was that one?
So I guess it's multiple, I'll break it down. So downtown is a regional cultural draw. And then I said that downtown, or at least the downtown district within walkable or portable distance has a growing and vibrant mixed housing economy, or whatever, however you want to say that. We got people actually building housing units within a walking distance of downtown. And I think those two things obviously go hand in hand with each other. And on that, I said the land bank and redevelopment authority was related, which we've already talked about. You've already said connecting roads, right? Connectivity on the roads, yeah, that's covered. I said a new library, which we've covered. She said library improvements or new. And then distributed parks. So have we said parks distributed around town? Yeah, it says parks spread out within the city. So that's everything I had.
Sure, I got it.
Yeah, I was going to go back around. Go ahead.
Yeah, when I talked about the airport, we need to remember to think about pre-planning for fire department out there. As that increases out there may be some needs and whatnots that the chief has to come up with. Also on that fire side of the house, we briefed on that road connecting up to the north side to maintain our ISO rating. Right now, they got to go all the way around the bypass. This way, that road going through up to Port of Lunsford, we need to seriously consider that.
Well, that's part of that road connectivity.
Yeah, well, make sure that that's out there though, when we talk about it.
Yeah, so I think the way this should probably work is that, we're going to throw this vision out there, then we're going to have to get with staff, we're going to have to break this down and say, okay,
Right.
how do we need to accomplish this? There's going to be certain different categories, different buckets that'll fall in each one of our department heads' category, and then we'll have to work through this, over the next couple of years of how we want to see all this come together. But I would see road connectivity, that's going to be a deep dive, right? With probably a consulting engineering firm or city planning firm. Come back to us with a plan. Okay, here's your 5 routes. Which one do you want to prioritize? Okay, it's going to cost X, Y, and Z. This is kind of, I would assume you're going to have to acquire property. You're going to have to do design work. These are multi-year projects, right here. Okay. All right, any other additions to our? Yeah, go ahead, Sonny.
I think we've talked about it before, but I put in my notes savvy signage, like nice signs for our different areas.
Yeah.
Huh?
Wayfinding.
Yeah, that's what, I put savvy signage, yeah.
That was on my notes.
And somebody mentioned, since we've been talking about proactiveness, and I don't know if this, maybe Parks and Recs can consider implementing some programs. I don't know that we don't have, but just staying on top of, homelessness, making sure that our citizens know that the city is aware, help, in position. I don't know what we can do, but I know it's talk of homelessness, mental health issues with our citizens, and we do have some facilities and resources, but that the city is also one of those.
Well, we can develop a homelessness plan.
That we can be some sort of a resource as well.
Partnerships.
A partner with some other resource.
What were the 2 things you mentioned? Homelessness and
Mental health.
Because it was a problem, they had the cold.
Concerned about.
Go ahead, Bill.
I know that we focus on a lot of the bigger picture of capital plan But we also need to go back to keep in touch that our departments, that we also have other plans that we need to make sure we're keeping up with our facilities that we currently have, the upkeep of that, the equipment updates that we need to be able to throw in our opinions on our 5-year plan of equipment replacement, updates to current facilities.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. You know, we, obviously, I think this side of the table focuses a lot on new stuff. But, you know, how do we make sure we're replenishing and sustaining what we already have? So, however you want to.
Yeah.
And let me say this too, I'm sorry, but to add on with that, is that it's also people infrastructure, because if we're growing and we're adding these facilities and we're adding these locations, I mean, it's gonna take additional people. We need to be keeping that in mind and planning on growth that way too.
Well, yeah, I mean, so if we truly are serious about casting a vision for what enterprise is going to look like in 2033, that's everything that's involved in that, up to, you know, including obviously how do you staff it, how do you fund it, how do you sustain it, and then at some point you got to say, is this feasible? Is this possible? You know, Jonathan walked us through how from a capital expenditure standpoint, yeah, it's possible. I mean, we're dreaming big, but Jonathan just walked us through a path over the next 10 years. We could afford the capital spend. We could do it. But how are we going to get there from a day-to-day operations spend, and what has to happen? That's why we have to look at this as a holistic, you know, living, breathing organism of, you know, tax base, you know, primarily tax base, right? I mean, we've got to grow our tax base, because nobody's sitting there. I hadn't heard today anybody sitting here cheering for tax increases. So, you know, the only way we're going to be able to afford any of this is to continue to focus on all of it. But we got to be able to plan for what is all of it? What does that mean? How many people? You know, what's the legacy cost of retirement? What's health costs going to be? You know, how many dump trucks do we need? You know, all this stuff. This is starting to build a framework where we can actually make that plan.
I think, to Leanne's point, all of you, when you came into office, probably came in and inherited a lot of, and not to blame a prior administration or this administration. I think municipal governments, county governments, state, federal, school systems, anything that deal with the public good, do a poor job of maintaining facilities in particular, but also other things, because it's very easy and it's sexy to build and to have this new thing. And over the years, we take it for granted because the public comes in and it's not theirs, and council members and school boards and people rotate off, and they don't care if they kick that chair or scuff that floor like you would at your own house. And if we don't maintain what we have, which is something that Mayor Cooper's been very big on, I'm very big on, then you know, we end up with what we've seen at, you know, the facilities that we have now, whether it's a wastewater treatment plant or recreation center. If you go around town and just look at what we own, or look at some of these schools that have you know, come offline, they're just examples. But it's not that Enterprise is worse at it than anybody else.
No.
It's just a natural state of being, and we have to be intentional about you know, resourcing that if we want to maintain it.
Right. Every current asset of the city that we have today will be 10 years older in 10 years. That's the way that works. So every roof we have, you know, every bathroom facility, every kitchen facility, every ball field, every chain link fence will be 10 years older in 2033. And so we better be thinking about that too. All right, well, any other additions? How did we say what Billy just said, what we just talked about? Maintain
what we own, facilities and equipment.
Right. Any other things to add to this? So let's see. We've got our 10-year kind of vision cast, are there any, does anybody have any heartburn with any of these? I mean, it seems like we got relative consensus around most of the stuff. I mean, does anybody have any, is there something up there that we just need to, that you think should be scratched? Realizing that all of us are going to have our favorites.
I'm sure some of that stuff will come into the 3-year plan.
Well, and that'll, we'll handle that here in a minute. That was going to be the first exercise of the 3-year plan. But we are a little ahead of schedule. I'm sure some of you would appreciate about a 5-minute break. If everybody's okay with that, let's take a 5-minute break. We're going to come back and hammer out the 3-year and the 1-year plan, and then we'll be pretty close to getting out of here. So let's be back at 2:50. All right, so our, like I said, let's go through this 10-year and see what can be pulled off of the 10-year and added to the 3-year, we think. So, Jonathan, I'll give you first stab at that, of things that you just think are gonna be happening anyways.
So this is that we could potentially accomplish in the next 3 years?
Yeah. And some of them.
Yeah, so, I mean, the Operation Clean Sweep, I think that that's something we're currently working on. It requires no funding, potentially, right now it doesn't. Just requires policy to complement what we're working on and bring recommendations to the council. To continue to address nuisance properties. New retail, I believe that's something that, there's not a lot we can do, just have to continue to promote it. And I know the council's engaged in some of these 772 agreements that the mayor has brought over the last few years. Hopefully some of that comes out. We're in the process on the step building, potentially at least one at the industrial park. And I think it would be feasible to look at potentially constructing a downtown redevelopment authority. I just talked through this real quick. So that's one that I'll leave up to you guys if you want to pursue that or not. But that would require very little to investigate it. I know we can do it, and it doesn't cost a lot of money to start it. It's accomplishable in the next 3 years.
To at least stand it up.
Yes. If we go down here to library improvements, your parks, your roads, your wayfinding signage, the GIS city infrastructure, all of those things would be something that I would suggest that if you wanted in the next 3 years, you say, hey, staff, go get me a consultant or consultants and pull all of these things together and tell us, how much is this going to cost? Let's just get proposals from consultants. Is it a $500,000 consultant? Is it a $500,000 or a $5,000 consultant? And bring those to you to, say, okay, we've got funding to do X, Y, and Z.
Because the likelihood of actually accomplishing them are.
We won't accomplish them, but we can do that deeper dive.
So that's not on the 3 year.
Yeah.
The actual execution is on the 10 year.
The wayfinding signage is executable over the next 3 years. In fact, some of the new facilities that you've already authorized, like the rec center, parks, over by the college, pickleball, all these things are going to need signs directing the public where they go. And we have one that we built downtown, but we don't have a plan to do that. And we already have somebody with Main Street that has come in and presented a plan to do wayfinding signage. So that's.
We want it to be all the flow within the city, right?
Correct.
Including gateways to the city.
That's right.
This company works on city plans like that.
So that would be something we could accomplish and actually start to implement, because we're going to have to buy some of the signs, probably budgeted. I think it's some of the.
We're supposed to start on that one.
John, some of that's included in our current budget, but some of it, we're just holding a place where we've got to do that.
I don't know how to tackle the compensation for city employees, but there are action items out there, like Scotty mentioned with the Tier 2 employment, that the council could consider and take action on in the next 3 years if they wanted to. That's open back up, as I know you're probably aware of. Land bank, that's something that we could do in the next 3 years.
Kind of related to the redevelopment authority.
Correct, it'd be two separate entities. And that would be basically the qualifier. That's one I'm not 100% sure. It's based on the number of foreclosure properties, distressed properties that you've got.
Go ahead and put a star by that one. All right, so, anybody else have something they just swear needs to be on the 3-year plan?
Oh, Jonathan had already touched base with us on the public transportation along with wiregrass transportation. Is that something that we could possibly get in a 3-year plan?
Possibly, it's dependent on their involvement. But yes, I mean, we could.
It's already on here. I mean, it's already, it says, our 3-year plan involves a public transportation of some kind, so yeah, just go ahead and start.
Thank you for pointing that out.
All right, so we've pretty much developed our 3-year plan here because we started with it last year as a 4-year plan, so now it's a 3-year plan. So if you were taking notes earlier as we went down through it, we've, our 3-year plan is basically what we had. Then we've added these few items of course, spec building, that's kind of an ongoing program. New retail is already on here. We have a built and thriving retail development on the southern bypass. Operation Clean Sweep, like you say, is ongoing. And then the wayfinding signage, land bank, and redevelopment authority are new additions. And then the maintaining what we own, facilities, equipment, so we probably need to develop a plan surrounding that.
Yeah, we're working right now on a 5-year capital plan on that, and so Mr. Mock pointed out that that's something that we're already engaged in, and will probably be done over the next 3 years.
And that includes sustaining the facilities that we have.
Correct.
All right. So is everybody good with that as our 3-year plan? That's what we discussed before we went into the 10-year, and then these few items that we've started. So I think we've got our 3-year plan there, so I don't think there's any need for.
Do we have anything in there about the animal control shelter?
So let's see. That is not currently on the 2025 plan. We can certainly add that to our 1-year plan as a, to ask staff to bring us back proposals for. I think that would be more. The first thing we got to do is assess our current situation. Just state, okay, here are the facts. These are the facts of today's situation. And then these are the different options we have out there. So animal control and shelter situation. All right, got it.
Do you want that on the 3-year?
Yeah, you can put it on 3-year, but I think we need to obviously address that in our 1-year plan. So let's get to work on our 2023 plan. What do we need to be working on today? So does everybody have their 2025 plan in front of them? And then, focus on the stars. That if we're going to accomplish these by 2025, what do we need to be working on this year? So I took some notes as we went through our 3-year plan. I've already got some of those, and then y'all can add to them. So in order for us to reach our streets of being an average PCI of 60 or greater, we need to complete phase 3B of the paving plan. That's right, Glenn?
Right.
All right. Then for us to stay on progress to complete our city projects, We need, where are we at on phase 2? Are we in design on phase 2 of PD?
We've done preliminary schematics on it, we haven't initiated design yet.
So what practically are we looking at on December 31st, 23 of phase 2?
It could be design and bid by then, possibly deciding on how it's going to be constructed, I guess. Next
So
question.
do we want to design, do we want to bid phase 2 PD?
If you want it done by 2025, I think we have to.
Okay, well then, that's the way this works. Bid phase 2 of PD. Barry, what's something actionable we can say about our sidewalks to stay on track? We've got $325,000 budgeted this year.
We need to continue some sort of a plan. I'd like to just, I propose it.
What about budgeting for next step?
So that's what I was saying, why don't we budget an appropriate plan per what staff's recommendation is for next year,
All right.
for the following years?
Just so on our city hall, where no action is needed there, other than awarding a bid when it comes back. So just say city hall under construction. It's certainly not going to be complete.
We're talking about 2023 goals?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
2023, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, 2023 goals. So our city hall will be under construction, the maintenance building at the rec center will be under construction.
Or at least a plan to do it. We're looking at possibility of adding that to the rec center project that's currently going on.
Okay.
So that's a completion 2024. So we probably will have it started late 2023, but I'm looking at probably adding.
So maintenance building on track to be completed in 2024.
2024, yes, sir.
Where do we need to be on our wastewater treatment plant upgrades in order to have those complete by 2025?
My personal goal would be to have the consultant selected, have a plan in place in 2023, and moving forward to some construction in 2023.
You get that, Jonathan?
Yes, sir.
Consultant selection.
This is for wastewater treatment.
Consultant selection, proceeding to construction.
Where do we need to be on pickleball courts? Or what's feasible?
Under construction.
Pickleball courts under construction. Okay. Spec buildings at the airport and industrial park, where do we need to be on those?
The airport needs to be under construction at the industrial park, design.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
So we've got the completion and implementation of a comprehensive plan. Our planning and zoning is approved. Thomas, do we want the code updated this year? That's feasible, right? Yes, sir. So code updated.
The last time. It's
It's
like,
okay, mostly.
come on.
So what was it on yours, code update?
Code update.
So this year.
So we've got the transportation plan. What you said earlier is we really need to do some deep dives on that. I sensed a an appetite for us to do that from the council. Is everybody ready to, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure there's some long list of items that you could come up with that we really need to dive deep on that. But what do you think the next sensible step is? Sane's doing something for us now.
We'll be wrapped up, Thomas, by mid-year, by June, July of this year for all the code review. What's our timeline on that?
June for subdivision and zoning ordinance updates.
And that should have everything with transportation related approved.
I believe so. Yes.
By mid-year.
I'll check on that.
So Sane should finish mid-year.
Mid-year. What if we had a plan to move forward with some plan for deeper dive?
Yeah, just say Sane studies complete with a plan in place to proceed with
For
deeper
the next
dive.
phases of that
Yeah.
transportation.
That sounds. So we really can't work on that until the second half of the year.
That's right. Councilman, when you say 2023, you're talking about calendar year?
Calendar year.
2023.
Calendar year. All right, fully staffed police force, we said earlier that we needed an updated plan from the chief. On where we're at and what the next steps are. No actions needed on the ADVA Veterans Home, we said. We're just going to stay the course there. A built-in thriving retail development, so sounds like we're working on lighting the southern bypass now. So complete lighting project.
We can do that this year.
How far out is the 4-lane event?
The 4-lane.
Yeah, oh, the bypass. I mean, that's all in there.
I don't see it on the calendar.
Yeah,
Why don't you add that to the 10-year?
yeah, I was gonna say,
Add a 4-lane Bowleville Circle,
yeah,
complete 4-lane.
there you go. Do it, went somewhere.
Yeah. We let that fall through the cracks. It is on our issues.
Well, yeah, and I wrote it down here, but I didn't say it.
Yeah, I've got it on our issues.
Excuse me.
I think first phase from 84 to 134 could be done in the next five years, potentially. I think that part's getting some traction.
All right, staying on our 3-year plan, all high-density and our multifamily developments up to code, safe and affordable housing. So I heard Thomas say that we needed a property maintenance code adopted. So that'll be adopted soon.
Yes, sir, this year.
Property maintenance code adopted. Then clear and defined process for externally interfacing entities doing business with the city. So this, you said that we're working with online process. We want to take down a few of those at a time. So we need to identify, you said engineering department and water.
I think for our business licenses, our engineering permits, and our water policies and procedures, I think we can do that all once we get our new website uploaded, which should be still June timeframe. So I think in the second part of the year.
So it sounds like we got a website goal for second quarter. And then some specific processes that need to be on that website for the third and fourth quarter.
So
Did you get the specific ones down? Yep, all right. So clarify processes for all citizens doing business with the city, customer experience, that's what we just talked about, right?
Yes, sir.
So businesses and cities, so public transportation of some kind. So this year, what we would like maybe some robust conversations with Southeast Alabama Regional Planning, is that the entity?
Yeah, we can have a, Southeast Alabama Regional Planning.
Should have mentioned that, man, that's all one thing, mistake, yeah, right.
And does the ALDOT need to be involved in those conversations?
They technically will be, they'd be authorized through the Regional Planning Commission, so we would just need to engage with them to pick up a route. They have the buses, they maintain it, they'd be getting the grant.
Is that Scott Farmer?
It is.
Okay. All right, next item was scratched. Next item is complete council city board packets. Clear and defined state governmental relations strategy, that's complete. City to develop and implement training performance evaluation onboard. So onboarding, so we need to set is that a this year goal, something that can be accomplished?
That was something that we were planning to do in fiscal year, next year's budget, correct?
Yeah. So
Based on how well learned went.
It could, but realistically, it's probably a 24.
Okay. So why don't we just say, be on track to complete onboarding initiative in calendar year 24? Does that sound like a?
Yes, sir.
Next item is complete. Item after that is city will develop and implement a financial plan. So, Leanne, what do we need to be working on in this calendar year to have these 5 items? That's capital plan, appropriations, city operations, debt, and user fees. I mean, the way I see this is a document that'll maybe a footnote to every single monthly update we get or something, just keeps us on track.
It is, I think, there's, several ways to look at this, is that I think we've already put in place some things with council and like our appropriations, where we're having open conversation with those entities each year in our budgeting process. But as far as like developing a plan for that, that could be something where we say, look, we're going to dedicate a certain percentage each year, or we're going to dedicate a certain, dollar amount, and then that's going to be our maximum, as far as like a moving forward thing. If we wanted to look at an overall, what would we like to dedicate for appropriations? And then
I have a thought on that, because when I came in, I know that the administrations prior, there was a few-year gap where the city asked the departments to cut funding, blanket across the board, 10% funding. When you notice that, though, and you look back, we also never cut funding to external organizations, whether, no matter what they were. And so part of that plan, one thing that I would like to at least the council to consider is, make sure we fund our organization first and know that we have other monies to spend out externally. Because if we want to go back here to maintain our own facilities and equipment and have the human capital and other things, we've got to be investing in ourselves before we can say, hey, yeah, we've got some extra money to give to this organization or that organization. So it's just something to consider, but as part of that plan.
Okay.
City operations, again, I think that's one of the items where it's, really department heads across the city are going to have to really look at their departments and assess, their functioning, whether as the city grows and as we add on these new facilities, what kind of staffing are we going to need? And so that we can sort of get a plan in place on, because again, that it addresses so many other things, compensation plans. We've said in there several times that these are things that are going to have to be addressed, competitive compensation, education opportunities that Chief mentioned and things like that, is that how are we growing on city operations? How is that then going to affect these other areas? So I think it's a deep dive for the department heads to sort of assess where we are and where they're expecting to grow as we bring all these things on board.
So this is something we want to accomplish in the next 3 years. What do we need to be working on this year to get us at least a third of the way?
On the capital side, sure.
The 5-year capital plan?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's probably the biggest lift of all this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so is that something we can accomplish this year, is to come up with like a 5-year?
We're working on it.
Is that a 5-year, is that a rolling?
It should be a rolling, yeah.
So a goal this year then would be to develop a 5-year rolling capital plan? So that'll be something we update annually. All right, then we've got the start items from, why don't you just go ahead and add those so we got them all in one place. So we've got public transportation, we've got spec buildings we talked about, new retail. That's something really actionable for us. Operation Clean Sweep. That's what the
Nuisance properties.
that's what the property maintenance code is going to handle for us. So we're working on that. Animal control shelters. So did we put?
We put it on the 3.
Okay, so what do we need to be doing this year to, I guess we just need to do we need to develop a plan to have a sustainable animal control and animal shelter program.
So as it was explained to me, some of you have been contacted about, this division between kill or no kill. We have a contract right now that handles some of that in the animal control side. We also have some nonprofits that perform those functions in the community for the no-kill side. Whether or not those are sustainable, I've heard that some of those places are full frequently. So maybe we're underserved in terms of capacity for what the community wants. And so I guess to your point, Councilman, just come up, engage with some of those external stakeholders and figure out, what.
Yeah. The council needs to be briefed on, okay, well, what are the current facts, and what are our options, and potentially, what kind of cost are we looking at? So, just a report or a plan needs to be presented to us, kind of a go forward. And wayfinding signage, what needs to happen this year so that we're on track with our wayfinding?
We need to engage a firm to, come up with a design standard and make recommendations on, where we should put signage.
All right. Is that something that can be accomplished this year?
Yes, sir.
All right, throw it up there.
Now, keep in mind, some of these things, I just want to, it can be accomplished if we get funding to do it.
Well, I didn't say execute on the plan. I just said, what you said was
Find a consultant.
engage a firm, tell us what we need and where, and then from that we can develop a budget and then executing it would be.
Well, I mean, even to engage the firm,
Okay.
we're not currently, in our FY '23
Gotcha.
budget, we don't have the funds to do that. So if it's 20,000, 100,000, I don't know.
Okay.
But we may come to you at some point and say, you know, that would be dependent on our
Of
fund.
course, we may come back and say, well, that'll be a fourth quarter. You know. We said that last item, maintain what we own, that's part of the 5-year rolling capital. And then so the last thing up there would be the land bank and the redevelopment authority. Jonathan, what can we do this year to ensure that we're on track to have a land bank and a redevelopment authority in place, but into 2025?
Need to get with more than likely an attorney. So depending on if that was a city attorney or an outside counsel, I'd probably recommend an outside counsel that does this, you know, in multiple communities throughout the state or the region, to come in and, you know, structure a redevelopment authority or a land bank. You know, we want to make sure whatever we structure is going to be legally viable.
So maybe engage an expert counsel on land bank and redevelopment authorities and present council with our options.
Okay.
Does that sound like a good plan? All right, I think we've covered everything. So now we just need a quarterly plan. So we just need a Q1 2023 plan, and then we can get out of here. I did want to, give everybody one last opportunity to bring up any issues that that they don't feel have been addressed today. We keep a perpetual issues list on our work session agendas. We're going to just read that to y'all. We've addressed a lot of them today. And that's kind of the idea, is that when we get in these meetings, we'll address them. So the ones that are still on here that I hadn't crossed, so we crossed off short-term rental, southern bypass 4-lane. We can cross off interior roads from Outback, right? That is no longer an issue, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we quickly brief the council on why that's no longer an issue.
Mayor Cooper and I met with Outback yesterday, and we think some communication issues probably were present, maybe on our end or theirs, but regardless, that's not an issue unless we make it an issue going forward. Unless we come to them and request them.
Right, which we're always free to do. All right, so bicycle and pedestrian traffic we talked about, land bank we talked about. So EV charging stations is still an issue on there. I didn't hear a whole lot of interest in diving down that. And then one issue that's been on here since the downtown fire was what the council's role is in fire prevention policy downtown. So I don't know if that's something we want to.
On the EV charging station, I would just submit to the council, from our perspective as staff, we have seen multiple entities within the city, private entities, start to move towards, I think one was recently publicized with a grant from ADECA for a gas station on the southern bypass there, the Legacy gas station. I know All-In Credit Union's working on something. Some of the automobile dealerships have EV charging stations. So I'm not sure if, certainly we can look at that in the future. But you know, from our perspective, I would think the private sector right now is handling the volume of EVs that we currently have in the city. Which I think probably 5% of the population might have an EV or less.
Does anybody take issue with removing this? Everybody's saying that they think the private sector's handling that. All right, what about this? I mean, Chief Davis, I mean, it's been on our list, we haven't really talked about it, but the fire prevention policy needs downtown. So what, I mean, is there anything the council needs to be doing? I hate to be a reactive body, but sometimes you need to be. I mean, obviously, we had a situation, is it time to say, okay, is there anything that we need to be doing to prevent or mitigate our risk downtown?
Once they're gone, they're gone. Not to state the obvious. Our two primary things that's going to make any kind of impact on our historic district or any buildings that are over a certain age is going to be early warning or sprinkler systems. I think we all know, and I do not mean this disrespectfully, most people, I told them that we're going to try to mandate sprinkler systems. You will no longer have a fire chief and my body will never be found.
Well, what about the monitoring and the early warning?
The monitoring and early warning is something I think that should definitely be looked at, and I've asked to visit with the Downtown Business Association. Obviously, I would welcome, but it's in the future.
So for the sake of time, what if we put on our goals this year is that we will work with the fire chief to explore early warning. What's the jargon?
That's fine. Early warning devices. Because we've already done a good bit of looking into this. So yes, by all means, that's achievable. Happily update you all. I would ask is it to what extent would you like to see that go, so that I have the parameters in which you.
Well, I think you need to present us the spectrum of saying you can do as little as this, as much as this. Where do we want to go with this? And we'll have a good conversation.
Certainly.
Jonathan, will you add that? Everybody okay with that?
How do you want me to phrase that?
Just say that council will work with the fire chief to consider early warning policies in downtown district. Any other issues before we move on to our last item of the day, which I promise won't last 30 minutes? All right, so let's quickly set our priorities for the rest of Q1, which is an abbreviated quarter. So basically what we're saying is where do we need to be in our first meeting of April so that we're on track. So is that all, that's all of 2023 right there?
Yes, sir.
Plus, just so, wait.
Well, I think we
It's
took
those three, right?
Yeah, we took those off of.
Yeah. So this is our annual plan right here. All right, so where do we need to be with the first item there, public transportation? So can we go ahead and schedule a meeting with Scott Farmer and crew?
I think we can get that now.
All right, so just make that, if you want to just star that as a Q1 goal. All right, So be on track for FY24 onboarding, so nothing to do there yet, right?
We're gonna make attempts to, tap into the things that we can with units to work with that onboarding, but,
In the next 8 to 10 weeks, are you gonna be working on that?
yes, what we can do. So we'll be moving to electronic communications, for different things, but we won't be fully ready to launch that.
Okay.
There's also a lot of changes to our munis because we're working in upgrading our system and changing that over. That process is not going to be complete until the end of June, beginning of July, which means some of those things are not going to be available until that time.
It sounds like we need to fund that one. Yeah, fund that one for later in the year. So 5-year capital plan for, available for FY24, what do we need to be working on?
I mean, we're already working on it by department. Each department's working on their own respective areas.
So we just need to be on track.
Yes, sir.
Brief council on animal control, shelter, is that a first quarter task?
I think we can have an initial meeting with some of the stakeholders.
Well then, let's just have an initial meeting. You just want to, yeah, the red will be our quarterly milestone. All right, then engage firm for wayfinding signage.
It could be a Q1 if you have funding for it.
So what about a proposal to council in Q1? Engage expert or legal authority on the land bank redevelopment authority.
I mean, I can find a legal expert on that subject and contact them and see if they have interest in working with the city.
So I guess same answer there would be to present council with a proposal. All right. Council will work with fire chief to consider downtown early warning measures regarding fires. So
Initial brief.
Right into it. You know the shop is
I think you have an initial brief that was this quarter. All right, so an initial briefing from fire chief in a work session. Glenn, our 3B paving, any milestones this quarter?
Start construction.
This quarter?
Yeah. 3B.
3B, okay, yeah.
3B.
So start construction, yeah, you're right. I was thinking. Bid phase 2 PD Park, where do we need to be in April, early April?
We need to get a task order. Basically, the initial.
Task order issue. All right. Budget sidewalk project, nothing to do there. That's going to be a Q3 item, right?
Should be.
City Hall under construction, no council action needed there.
Bid.
Wait, no, we need to, I guess, we're going to bid, yeah.
Potentially award the bid.
Yeah,
Make
bid
a decision.
and, bid and potentially award. Obviously, no obligation there. Rec maintenance building under design.
Probably Q2.
Okay. Wastewater treatment consultant selected and under construction.
Remember, we only got till the end of March.
Consultant selection,
Remember you said that.
consultant selection, right?
Q2, okay. Pickleball under construction. Designs be completed this quarter?
We can have, well, you approved to do construction design last, or a couple council meetings back. We're having a kickoff meeting this week. So,
I don't think it'll be done Q1.
Okay. So that's a key.
Already.
And we're not gonna have the 30, 60, 90 iterations.
Rates right to like 90%.
So, spec building, anything we need to be doing this quarter on the spec buildings?
No, we're gonna let Barb go ahead, as prescribed in the last council meeting, to go over the design. I think at that point, it's what, 4 to 6 weeks on design?
6 weeks of design, so right at the end of Q.
So maybe design's complete or substantially complete?
Maybe go to bid.
I think we'll have design complete, starting advertising.
So just ready for bid maybe? And nothing on the North Industrial Park this quarter, right?
That's it.
City code updated, anything this quarter?
I think we can get updated this quarter.
All right, so check. Transportation plan, same complete, nothing with that. Next phase, proposal awarded. Nothing really to do on that, the first 2 quarters, right?
That'll be great. That's key.
Update police staffing with next steps. I hate to speak for chief, but could he?
Mark that.
I'm happy to sign up. We can get the first quarter brief.
Well, so we'll tentatively, yeah, we'll just call for a brief, yeah. We'll do a brief. And if he says I can't do that, then we'll bump it to
That's what happens if
Following
you
tolls.
complete southern bypass lighting.
It won't be done first quarter.
Okay.
We have
Adopt property maintenance code. Check.
We'll be done.
Go live with new city website app.
That'd be June.
No milestones for first quarter. Okay.
Emily, you got it?
The app is going to be at least a couple of weeks after the new website rolls out. Those won't be simultaneous, just a
I
heads
think
up on that.
Q3 is pretty safe.
Okay.
We can monitor you or give you an update on the progress.
Yeah. All right, city process policy on website, any of those have first quarter milestones?
No.
Okay,
Especially right now on the revenue side.
gotcha. So we'll revisit that in Q2. All right, well, does anybody have anything else we need to be working on the rest of the week, and the next 10 weeks or so? Seems a little anticlimactic, but that's we've got our plan.
Like, wow. Yeah. All right, get the
So we'll get these scanned in. Barry's going to take them back to the plotter and get them scanned in.
Yeah, if you'll get them scanned in, then.
We'll transcribe them, if that's okay with you, we'll put it in a Word document or whatever format you want.
Yeah, the PDF would be great. And then what I'll try to do is I'll synthesize all this down in a document like we did last year, put it in front of y'all, make sure everybody agrees with, yeah, that's what we discussed, that's what we agreed to. And then we'll just stay on that rhythm like every time we get together, we get an update, and every 3 months, we plan our next 3 months, and then just stay on that rhythm. And then I think it's been working pretty good so far. So. All right, well, thank y'all. Sorry I didn't get y'all out of here at 3:30.
I don't know. Can I mention one thing? I just got a thing from James Brown, Coffee County EMA. I don't know if y'all heard. We've got weather coming in, and